Hello everyone. Thought I'd give you an update on recent purchases I've made on books and DVDs. Normally I would put this in my regular updates, but I've seemed to have acquired quite a lot recently and it'll take a little bit of time, so thought it was worth making a separate video. So first up, purchased this book here. I was informed of the existence of this book by one of my viewers, a chap called Dale G. Gutt, who left a comment on one of the videos where it's still possible to leave comments on, and gave me a heads up on the recent publication of this book here. I'm very grateful to him because it's an absolutely fantastic book. It's called Line in the Sand. It's by Richard Janes, who I think was the author of an article in Military Illustrated that I was using as a reference for my French Foreign Legion project. And this is an absolutely wonderful book. As it says in the description of the back, gives an overview of the French conquest of Morocco between 1900 and 26. Providing a general outline of the conquest of Morocco, but the book concentrates on the use of forts and other fortifications built by the French Foreign Legion to secure the territory gained and pacify the area. Yeah, and there's loads in here. It's really good. It's going to be a really good read. Haven't read it yet. Lots of maps and plans, as well as photographs of sort of archaeological artifacts and so on, the places where the author has worked. Not really much else to say other than thank you very much to Dale G. Gutt for pointing this out to me. It's going to be a really useful reference source for my Foreign Legion project. Okay, now I got that from Amazon, and as is so often the case, you know, Amazon recommend other things that you might be interested in based on that project, and that started a whole little sort of trickle of additional purchases. The first thing was this book here, The Rif War Volume 1, From Taxdirt to the Disaster of Annuel, 1909 to 1921. It's in a series called Africa at War, and this particular one is by Javier Garcia de Gabiola. Now, it's Volume 1. There is a Volume 2, but it's not yet been released, so I will get that when it comes out. I think it's due out around May, something like that. But obviously the Rif War, currently painting up Berbers to combat my French Foreign Legion troops. So this is going to be a very useful reference source, as well as more background on the Rif War. In particular, I really know nothing about the war against the Spanish, which was where the war actually began was in Spanish Morocco rather than French Morocco, and then it sort of spilled over into the war against the French colonists. I think this series is actually, you know, obviously it's African wars and warfare, but these books, to my mind, you know, bearing in mind that it's a very sort of specialised, or a more specialised field than the Osprey range, but I think they are as worthy of attention as Osprey books. There's not so much colour pictures in them, but as you can see, there are some colour plates and so on. But they've got far more substance. That, you know, there's a lot of content in them, and a lot of historical detail in them. So again, really pleased to find this, and I wouldn't have known about it had it not been for my purchase of The Line in the Sand. And as I say, as soon as the second volume comes out, I'm going to be getting hold of that. Now, as I say, in terms of this series of, this series, I'd never heard of this series before either. Published through Hellion and Company. I noticed on the back here, they do an awful lot of books, and the majority of these are sort of modern African wars, which of course I have an interest in as well, from my AK-47 games, and I've got a big collection of 15mm modern African wars figures, so I thought I would pick up one of these, and I went for Culloden 1978. So here it is, and this is an equally impressive book. So I think I'm going to start investing in a lot of these titles. But yeah, there was really thorough, comprehensive read, this looks like, as well as having some fairly it's got a lot more colour plates in than the other book that I've just shown you. Vehicles, armour, aircraft, uniforms and so on. But it's also, Culloden is a sort of interesting scenario type inspiration for various games of AK-47 or whatever set of rules you want to play. So yeah, glad to get hold of that one as well. And then sort of on the same kind of theme of African warfare, for some reason I noticed on YouTube a video of a film called Under Two Flags. You can get hold of the DVD of it. I may well do. It's a 90. Well, there are actually 6 films of this book, Under Two Flags, that have been made, but most of them were made in the silent film era. But it's a very kind of similar feel to it. It was made, I think it was 1930s sometime. The talkie version of it had Claudette Colbert in it, amongst others. It has a very similar feel, though, to the Beaugest movies. So I thought I would get this book. Now, this isn't the book. This is a graphic novel. So a little bit kind of lightweight and so on, but I thought I'd go for it. Of course, I'd never heard of this book before, and it's actually by a writer called Ouida, and that was the pen name of a female novelist, sort of fairly unusual in the 19th century. Her real name, got it on the screen here, was Maria Louise Ramey, and she had quite an extensive portfolio of titles and works and so on, but they were kind of principally, I suppose you could call them, adventure stories and so on. Quite strange for a 19th century woman to be writing those kind of books. An inspiration for other authors such as Jack London, who cited her as one of the main influences of his work. Yeah, really interesting. I've never heard of her before, so thought I'd just get this as a bit of fun, and maybe one day I'll buy the DVD, but there's not really a lot of point, because you can, if you're prepared to put up with all the adverts on YouTube, you can watch it on YouTube instead. So there we are, another book set in or a sort of fictional book set in North Africa. Also from Amazon, I bought a new set of, or not a new set, but a new to me set of wargames rules that I'd never come across before. Irregular Wars, Conflict at the World's End. hasn't got the author's name on here, but it was written by Nicholas Wright. Yeah. Now, I noticed this and thought, yeah, maybe this will be a useful set of rules when I get around to painting out my Wargames Atlantic Conquistadors and Aztecs. As you can see from the, the one of the illustrations in here, does seem to be aimed at those. I've read through the rules, and yeah, they're certainly, I'm going to give them a try. But it won't be for Aztecs and Incas, and the reason for that is that it's sort of like multiple figure basing, and I'm looking for a set of rules, for individual basing. But this is a really kind of I don't know. Maybe it's trying to encompass too many theatres and so on, but it's got army lists in here for just about everything that wasn't in Europe, and in fact it has got some European conflicts, but basically anything goes that was any army that was existed during the 16th and 17th centuries. So it's got all these at the world's end kind of armies like the East Indies Sultanates and so on, but it's got more substantial armies such as the Swedes and the Poles and the Cossacks and so on. So I was thinking I could use it with my by fire and sword figures. Need to paint up a few more Muscovites and then I could have a game with those. But it's got Moguls, and I've been interested in the Mogul Empire for a long time, as well as other things like, so I said some of the armies are set in Europe. It's got Lowland Scots and English and so on, so you could fight border wars. So yeah, it's going to be, I'm going to put it to one side for the time being, but I'm glad I got hold of this set of rules. And it's got some interesting mechanics as well as chance cards and so on. The cards are a little bit difficult to get hold of. You have to write off to the author, who will sell them to you at cost price. But I might end up, when I get around to playing them, I might make up my own. But yeah, I thought that was interesting, so that could be added to my catalogue. Now, I've been going to a lot of charity shops recently. Since I've been, recovering from my health problems of recent months, being frustrated at stuck indoors, I tend to go out every day now, often without any kind of destination in mind or purpose. And when that happens, I tend to end up in browsing charity bookshops. So one charity bookshop in particular that I've always found, a kind of treasure trove of military books and so on, is a book in a place called Plimpton, which I walk to, but it takes me about an hour and a half to walk over there. But the British Red Cross have got a book charity shop over there, so there's nothing but books, and it's got jigsaw puzzles and things like that in it, but I often pick up a lot of interesting things in there. So I made a trip over there recently. I'll show you the things I got from there. The Napoleonic Source book by Philip J. Haythornthwaite. I got this simply because it was cheap, and it seems fairly, fairly useful source of information. Used to see it advertised a lot in Wargames magazines back in the 1990s. I'll probably just end up keeping it on my bookshelf and very rarely refer to it, but thought I would pick it up as it was there. Also, on the same visit, I got quite a few Osprey books that were going for £1.50 each. So when they're going for that kind of price, I will get them anyway, regardless of whether I'm into that particular army or not. So I got the US Army 1941 to 45. I got one in the campaign series, the Somme, 1st of July 1916. You know, I will buy that more for my interest in, you know, the history rather than wargaming it. I haven't got any World War One armies to play war games with. Closest I've got is my Russian Civil War. Again, I haven't got any figures from this. It's Prussian staff and specialist troops. You know, if they're going for £1.50, you've got to buy them, haven't you? And I noticed this one is actually by the disgraced Peter Hofstra. So I'm not quite sure what Osprey have done about that, whether they actually still sell this book or not. But yeah, you can't really turn these kind of bargains down if you see them. So they were the only Osprey books I got in there. I did also buy, this isn't really wargaming related, but I'll show you anyway. I got this book here, which is Sussex Celebrities. The reason I got this is that I go to Sussex fairly regularly, and I've done a walk around Brightling, and Brightling is the final resting place of, I can't be able to find it now, this chap here, Squire Mad Jack Fuller, who actually built his grave. It's like a big pyramid in this Brightling church's graveyard, and I've done a walk around that area looking at some of the follies that he built. He was noted for his building of strange follies. He's meant to be buried sitting upright in this pyramid. I don't know if that's true or not, but I got this simply because it's you know, it's got sort of local interest, a place that I sometimes visit. And then also, while I was in the same charity shop, I picked up a lot of DVDs. I got a few John Wayne movies. So The Alamo, not much to say about it. If you don't know this film, then you know, you won't really be interested in it. But it's a kind of a little bit cliched kind of depiction of the siege of the Alamo. There's been more recent remakes of it, but a good film nonetheless. Some interesting kind of battle scenes. I got a couple of John Ford movies, mainly because Pony Wars sort of drew its inspiration from all those old-fashioned westerns and cavalry movies and so on. So I got She Wore a Yellow Ribbon, and also got Fort Apache. So there were 3 films that are known as John Ford's cavalry trilogy. Fort Apache was the first, She Wore a Yellow Ribbon was the second, and there was also a film called Rio Grande. And I've watched both of these now and thoroughly enjoyed them. Very kind of dated in terms of, I don't know, the storyline and so on. They don't make films like them nowadays, but yeah, good fun, good watch, and kept up my inspiration for playing and painting up figures for Pony Wars. And then hardly to do with wargaming at all, John Carpenter's film Big Trouble in Little China, which I've always really loved. It's a fantastic film, very tongue-in-cheek, very light-hearted, and it would actually, you could actually play a game of this if you got the figures together. It's kind of it borrows a lot from martial arts movies and so on, but there's monsters and sort of, you know, super kind of villains and so on. Great fun. If you haven't seen it, I can highly recommend it. And the way you can tell it's a John Carpenter film, it's got the same kind of music, the same kind of sounds and lighting and so on. It's very dissimilar to a lot of his films, you know, which are much darker and more horror stories and so on, things like that. Yeah, but yeah, brilliant DVD. Really glad to have that. Okay, that was everything I got in that charity shop. On the subject of DVDs, I did get from Amazon a film that I'm just showing you to warn you against buying it. Medieval, which came out in January. I was really looking forward to this. It's follows the Czech hero Jan Žižka, who was blinded in one eye, who was around at the time of the Hussite Wars and so on, and was really looking forward to this, but it is an absolute stinker. I could barely follow the plot. I wasn't at all sure what was going on, and it's the sort of early rise of Jan Žižka rather than the there aren't any particular spectacular battle scenes or anything. Very difficult to follow the good guys and the bad guys and what's going on, and Michael Caine is in it, which you would you'd think would lend some kind of respectability to it, but I'm sure he's very embarrassed by the part that he played in it. So if you're ever tempted to buy this, I can honestly say don't waste your money and your time. Another charity shop I went to, picked up quite a lot in. What order to show them to you in, but I got all these in another bookshop, charity shop, Culloden, 1746. This was going for £3. Nothing in colour inside it, but looks like quite a useful read on the Battle of Culloden, so that will come in handy for my Jacobite project, which will get going on again. If I ever see these Oxford Histories of England going in charity shops, I'll always pick them up, because they are, they're a really good collection if you can get hold of the whole lot. For detailing the whole of English history. I think this was the last one in the series, so they go up to 1945. I don't think there's anything beyond that. And I wasn't sure. This was going for £1.50? No, £1.75. I wasn't sure if I actually had this or not, and when I got home I discovered I did have it already, but I didn't want to take the risk of it being sold by the time I got back if I didn't have it, so I've now got two copies of that. But my mistake, not to worry about it. History wise, I also picked up this, which was the companion book to the 1964 BBC TV series, The Great War. So 1964, the BBC made a 50th anniversary series, The Great War. If you haven't seen it, it's worth having. I've got it all on DVD, but I bought the DVD, can't remember when that came out, but this book came out to accompany the release of that DVD. So it wasn't actually published in 1964. It was brought out 2003. Here we go. The edition published in 2003 to accompany the retransmission on BBC Two of the television series The Great War. And yeah, this is really, that series really is what coloured my impression of what the Great War was like. The fact that they interviewed so many veterans of the who were still alive in 1964, to me gives it a lot more credibility, really. So I'm prepared to accept the version of the war that was as presented by the BBC series. That's all I say about that. Other than Corelli Barnett is recently deceased, but he is actually an old boy of my school in Croydon. And then not so much wargaming related, but in the same bookshop, I picked up this. Now I know a lot of people do actually collect Marvel figures and play games with them, so I suppose it does qualify as a wargaming subject, but I don't, but I do have an interest in just the the visual imagery of comic books and things like that, and I'm a bit of a sucker as well for books like this, which I think of as kind of almost like reference books, because it's got everything in here. So I like to have these kind of books on my bookshelf and just know that I can look up anything in the Marvel comics universe and find it in here if I ever need to. And maybe one day, you never know, I might get around to playing games of it and so on. And then the final book I have to show you is, this would probably come more under my sort of out and about kind of playlist rather than the wargaming playlist. It's How to Read Buildings, a Crash Course in Architecture, and this book reminded me of a little bit of a book that I read when I was a student called it's by a chap called Sumner, called The Language of Classical Architecture, and this is far more kind of all-embracing book than that, but it tells you how to recognise architectural features and understand when that particular building might have been built and what the architect was trying to express and so on. In terms of classical architecture, I probably won't be able to find it now, but different types of pillar on the outside of a building would be used, different styles would be used for different types of building. So Tuscan columns would be used in sort of military buildings like garrisons or something, or in prisons, whereas Corinthian arches would be used for more kind of municipal buildings, more grandiose. Here we go. Yeah, so you've got the Tuscan, Ionic, Corinthian and composite, and Doric as well. So the buildings would be expressing different kind of, making different statements. But if you're walking around, a town that's been built over and changed over the years, it helps you to kind of recognise, that particular building was must have been built in the 17th or 18th century, and that one is a Victorian building, but it's copying, Gothic styles of a much earlier period, and so on and so forth. So I picked this up straight away because it's a useful kind of guide to architecture. And that, I think, is everything that I've got to show you. Just thought I'd make this video rather than tack this on an end of one of my wargaming updates, because as you can see, I've been busy purchasing things recently. Thanks very much for watching. See you on the next video. Bye for now.